Brent Graham of Goodforthegame, and welcome to the Super Rugby Week 2 betting preview. We're going to be getting tucked into the Super Round taking place in Melbourne, and I've got two guests to take me through that. Let me introduce you to them now. I'm going to start off at the top of the screen with At the Crow Tips. He's looking like he's in the dark there. Would it be load shedding by any chance? Chris, how are you, mate?
Oh, yeah, you won your prize, Brent. Yes, absolutely. As I said, I got caught off guard this morning, so I'm sitting in the dark by a window, and by a hole in the wall, and I got some backup modems going. So yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me all right. But excuse me, there might be some interference. But yeah, good to be back. Enjoyed last week. I see some of our caps came through, so hopefully we have a good weekend again.
Yeah, I thought of you guys last week quite a bit because you know, and particularly Nathan, and I'll bring you in here. You got some of the early lines, and that actually proved to be very important in the end in a couple of games. I think with the Chiefs Crusaders, you got the -2.5. I took the -6.5 just before kickoff, and it ended on 4 points. So on that note, welcome back. I got the feeling you had a pretty decent opening weekend of Super Rugby.
Yeah, and Super was pretty good actually. So 3-1. So can't complain about that. No shortage of electricity here either. So just leave the lights on all the time, aircon, whatever. It's fine.
You can't complain about that either. Well, I've got the Super Rugby outrights just scrolling at the bottom. Chiefs 19-10, Crusaders 29-10, Blues 33-10, Hurricanes 8, Brumbies 10. Actually, no change to the top five in the betting other than a little bit of price movement, but they're pretty much in the same order after last week. But anyway, Nathan, we're going to a Super Round now, so all of these games taking place in Melbourne. Never quite understood the logic for this, to be honest. I guess it's a bit of a disadvantage for certain teams over the season in the sense that they lose a home game, which they normally would have. But first of all, what are your thoughts on the fact that it's in Melbourne, and does that change your thinking in any way?
Well, I mean, obviously, in terms of a home advantage, yeah, that's always going to make a difference. The logic behind having it in Melbourne, can't help you there. I'm not sure there is any. I think
keep them alive.
I'm sure the theory behind it was probably to promote the game and these sorts of things. But given that there's probably not going to be a team in Melbourne next year, it might not be particularly helpful. But I think the concept is fine, but I think they could definitely potentially choose another location.
No, that'll be interesting to see.
Imagine they had it in one of the Fijian Islands venues. That would be amazing for them. That would be amazing because when those guys play each other at home, the crowd's insane, and I think they would embrace it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, or the US, that'd be good.
Well, yeah.
We'll do it in Hawaii.
Yeah, the US would certainly be interesting. Both of those ideas, I think, are good ones. So let's get stuck into the games. Nathan, I'm going to start with you. We got the Highlanders here, plus 11.5. I kept this game 10.5. It opened here in South Africa at 14.5. So there has been money for the Highlanders on the cap. I think Blues resting a couple of players who've played 1 week in about 6 months. And we've got a total points line, which I know Chris will focus on more, of 57.5. What are your views?
Yeah, I mean, my numbers are telling me that the Blues is the right side here. I think there's always a lot of uncertainty when you come into the season, no matter how you're sort of handicapping whatever methodology that you're using. There's obviously a high degree of uncertainty in the beginning, and you're trying to adjust whatever ratings it is that you're using. I just think that, I mean, probably an open question for you guys as well, is that what have we seen that has made us think that the Landers are actually better than last year? I mean, they've had an okay preseason. We all know preseason doesn't really count for much. And basically, they've just met expectation in a game against Moana, which, to be fair, I think it finished line close 13.5. They win by 14, bang on the expectation. Didn't impress me a lot. I mean, if as somebody that had money on the Highlanders, you were kind of on the edge of your seat your whole time. You never really felt comfortable. There were times where I thought Moana were sort of knocking on the door and, perhaps, made a mistake or, let the Highlanders off the hook. So I haven't seen enough from the Highlanders that actually has impressed me. I mean, this reminds me a little bit of week 1 last year. So week 1 last year, money came in on the Highlanders. They were backed into about 9 in this same fixture, and they lost by 40. And so I still have that in the back of my head that until they actually put in a really good performance against somebody half decent, I'm not really sure why there'd be all this enthusiasm for the Highlanders. And as I said, that's from someone that backed them last week.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I actually remember that game was 60 points to 20 to the Blues. And I'm going to come up to you then, Chris, on that one. First of all, I like the way Nathan put it there, because I went into last week quite optimistic about the Highlanders, and
We
Nathan
all
sort of
did,
made
yeah.
the point, well, why are you optimistic? And it's a good point, because I guess the only thing I could have been thinking of was the comments that I've seen on Twitter about pre-season and that. And in my mind, I kind of built these Highlanders up to be a bit better than they were, and they weren't. And it's important, sometimes as a punter, to just take a step back from the noise and actually assess, you know, what's all the hype about. So bringing you into this game, I also just want to point out on a total points perspective, I remember this round last year, and I went and quickly looked at the stats when I started the forum thread. The 6 games last year in the Super Round averaged nearly 70 points a game. It was 69 point something a game in Melbourne. The lowest scoring match was, I think, Brumbies Blues, 45 points. So with that in mind, you know, I'm looking forward to your views on the point slides as we go as well. What do you make of this opener?
Just Brent, you really segmented perfectly on 2 accounts there. We both capped this game at 10. I've also at that cap. And I was saying in my building up this game, look, I remember exactly. I remember this weekend last year, and it was rain in points. And I have the sentiment again that it's going to be again. I really do. I think we're going to see a mountain of points, rain in the points again. However, I think the bookies are, as I said, they're much shrewder. We've seen these high mid-50s points lines, which is what you'd probably expect to see. But I must say, I had been hoping for lower lines, because we have been seeing some lower scoring games. But these bookies seem to be getting smarter. So I agree. So my sentiment for the weekend is I do believe we're going to see points, but there are high lines. My point is I was hoping for lower lines. So where we go with this game, I think I agree. Like, you know, I kind of also got into some of the noise. I think putting up those Highlanders. I think a lot of mine was also posed in Pacifica. I heard murmurings that they're not settled. They don't know where their home ground is, changes, maybe else. And possibly also, if that wasn't a mid-season game, I would have been probably more on the Highlanders when the Fijians seem to fall away a little bit. But because it was a first-up game, they came in there strong. I thought having a guy like Surveyor in the midfield was so good for them as well. So I think we've got to put our hands up to Pacifica as well. They played well. But as the Highlanders, I mean, how many times I think we've been tearing our hair out, and Nathan as well, like Highlanders will be like, they're like the Italy of the Super Rugby. They'll be in the 22 over and over again, and they can't get it over the line. They'll have 7 mauling opportunities. They can't get it over the line. So right, we put a lot of, we obviously the Highland built up the Highlanders. I agree. So where are they? So I capped it at 10. So it's a bit, So obviously there's nothing that's sticking out to me. Who would I take here? Like we said, it's different strategies. When I'm at this point, I usually go on the plus, but opposing the Blues, opposing the Blues and saying, now, well, what are the Highlanders really is scary. So for me, points are well capped. I would lean slightly over the points because I do think these games are going to go close to 60, possibly over. If one that doesn't, it could be this one, because this game has previously become quite a close game. So again, I will be looking at points all of this round, but not this game specifically. So I'm going to just call it right now. Well capped on both the cap and the points. And if I was going to lean, I would lean on the plus, but that's a very small punt.
Chris is say one thing about the points
tomorrow. Sorry, Nathan.
So I was just going to say one thing about the points. It was an interesting point that you raised about the number of points scored in the Super Round last year. Now, the thing was about the start of last year is there was a number of rule changes. Like I can't remember exactly what all of them were, but one of them was about scrum halves having to stand off the scrum, gave the number 8s a chance to sort of wind up, come off the back, and it really aided attacking play. I think there was 2 or 3 rule changes. In those first few rounds, there was an explosion of points, like it was kind of off the charts. Now, as the season went on, those things started to taper off, and you saw towards the end it went back to kind of normal, or and then they started to overcap, and then unders became the play. So what happens, of course, is that you change the rules, teams take time to adjust to it, but when they do adjust, things tend to go back to normal. So it's it's a bit of a cat and mouse sort of scenario. So that's all I'd say about the points, is that when you're looking back historically and you see the start of last year, it's probably not necessarily indicative of what this year's going to be like.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. And for me, as a natural overs punter, the last 6 months games haven't been going nearly as overs in general. So I'm just wary of how I'm not running headfirst into overs anymore. If I was listening to Handicap 2 years ago, I'd be going, Brent, Friday morning, overs 57, let's go. You can quite easily, but I'm not running into that anymore. So yeah, I think the plus, I don't know what you just quickly also on the team news, Nathan. I mean, AJ Lamb at 13. I'm not so sure about that. I think he could be a bit loose. That Blues team looks a little bit looser without maybe they've changed Christine Ione, haven't they? I mean, that back row looks dangerous. I still think it could open up, but at the same time, it could also be scrappy. But yeah, I just looking at the team news, I think this, like we said, we had team news on the first round and changes had been made. So like, how much form are we really bringing into the second week? Because I like it that's why I love international rugby, because you almost get the same 15 week in, week out, and you can get a nice form line. But there's quite a lot of changes in all the teams. So it's, again, like, feels like it almost still feels round 2, always still feels like a round 1, doesn't it? So it's also why I never also go heavily into things in round 2.
Well, just a welcome to the guys who are joining us in the live chat. I see the Undertaker. He's on the show with me tonight. That's at 9 o'clock. So make sure you join us there. That's going to be URC and, of course, a bit of Super Rugby as well. We've also got Mike and Reverend joining us there from New Zealand. Right, let's get into the next game. Chris, I'm going to start with you here. There has been money for the Rebels. They opened -4.5. It has gone out to 6.5. I actually kept this 4.5. So it was exactly where I did. And we got a points line of 56.5. I've got a fancy in this game, but I'm going to wait for you two guys to talk, and then I'll share my views.
Brent, I think that's why you invite me on the show, because I also capped it at about 3 or 4 myself. So yeah, if anything, you'll be leading again here on the plus. I think this is so interesting because, you know, those damn Rebels, eh? I mean, I think we were talking them up last week. I think a lot of people were back in the Rebels, and man, oh man. But I mean, I watched the game. I mean, I don't know how a team can play so much rugby and score so many points. It was ridiculous. I mean, you spoke about the Brumbies. The Brumbies, they are so bloody solid as well. Like, that's what I was saying. They came in there, they're so well coached and drilled, and it's just a better unit overall, aren't they, than the Rebels? And the Rebels do this. I mean, it's not like we can't be overly surprised. But in saying that, I think that the guys that they've brought in, Tupou now starting. I think that's a big thing. He had some minutes under his belt. I think Daigunu at 12 was a disaster. He's not a centre, he's a wing. So I think, look, to be honest, I don't know who that 12 is. So that scares me because games like this, I'm going to call it, I think this is going to be probably a little bit much tighter. But it does worry me when I see I'm going to say I don't know the guy. No name comes in and busts up a try or costs a try, and it costs the bet, because I've seen this before. But I just think there's going to be there will be a Rebels turnaround. But at the same time, I'm battling to see how they are 7 points better than the Force at this stage in a derby, and they are at home. I think Rebels are going to be better, but I don't think the Force are going to let the Rebels get their own way by any means. So I quite like the plus here. The points, I think there probably might be points. This cap could go over here, but I much prefer the Force than the plus here, to be honest.
Right, Darren coming in, he's saying just can't trust those Rebels, and Henrik saying the betting's wrong. He would go for the Force. Reverend, he prefers the Rebels. Forwards got dominated by the Brumbies last week. I think, Nathan, let me share my bet as I go into you. I watched those Rebels last week, and they were, as to Chris's point, they played a lot of rugby. I just don't know how they didn't score any tries. Credit certainly to the Brumbies. My feeling is that the Rebels might score some points this week, and that's actually my bet. I think you probably get about over 32.5 Rebels points. I'm looking at the fact that last year's games were high scoring. I'm hoping for a bit of a repeat, and I'm going for the Rebels to score some points. I'm not touching the handicap. What are you doing on this one?
Yeah, so it's one of these interesting situations where if you've got a model that's producing a number, and sometimes you'll look at that and you're happy that it's on the same side that you were thinking. This is not that game. So my numbers are favouring the Force, but I'm not sure I could really bring myself to back them at the moment. I think the thing is, and you guys have kind of touched on it, is that there are a lot of red zone entries for the Rebels. As you said, they played a lot of rugby without anything to show for it. I don't think this is one of those situations where I think sometimes the final score is not a true reflection of the game. And when you've got sort of underlying stats that are saying one thing and a final score that's saying something else, in general, I think, and this is something that you get if you ever kind of listen or bet NFL, that the actual underlying stats are more predictive over a longer period of time than the scores themselves. So I just have a feeling that this will kind of regress back to the mean in some way, and the Rebels will actually be better than they showed last week. I'm not sure you could say the same for the Force. I don't know what it is that they're going to do. So this was probably one I'd stay away from. But as I said, a Force bet would be the Force, but can't force myself to do it.
Yeah,
nice one. Yeah, these Aussie derbies can be quite scary. Chris, anything else on this?
No. I agree. I mean, I think we've all watched enough rugby. There's certainly going to be a Rebels improvement. That's one thing I'm certain of. They are going to score a whole lot more points than they did. I just get it. Yeah, it's Aussie derby. It's also what the force can be. But I totally agree that I like that sentiment leaning on the Rebels points. But yeah, I would agree with Henry. You're a brave man to do that. But I don't. They might score, but how much they get in, I don't know.
And the Rebels actually, they hammered the force in this corresponding fixture last year, which doesn't help things. I've just got the score in front of me. I think it was 52-14 last year.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Hoping for something like that. Guys, we're going to move on to the next game. But just if you are watching the show, maybe for the first time, hit a like button. It does help the channel a lot. And also subscribe to our channel. We do, of course, have the 9 o'clock show coming up later tonight. But Nathan, let's stick with you for this one. We got Moana plus 7.5. This handicap opened in South Africa at 10.5. And I know straight away, I think it was possibly Pablo on the forum came in straight away and took the 10.5. I might get the name wrong there, but there was support straight away for Moana on the cap. And against the Drill, we got a high points line of 60.5. Nathan, I'm not sure if it was you made the point last week that the Moana are playing a bit more maybe of a structured game than what we saw last year.
Yeah, I think they've potentially sorted out some of their coaching issues or structure, or it may just be just a level up in terms of maturity, just another year in the competition under the belt, another year as a professional team. This game is probably the most interesting one of the round. Like, as you said, it opened 10.5 here at the TAB, got bet in from there. It opened in Pinnacle at 3.5 and you got bet in the other way. So we've landed right in the middle, but there was a huge variation in opinion. I don't know, when I first looked at it, my gut feel said Moana, like that I thought that was the right side. And then I sort of sat back, and similar to what I was saying about the Highlanders, I sort of thought, well, what have they done? They were clearly the worst team in the competition last year. They've lost arguably their best 2 players, may not even be that arguable. They put in, I guess, a decent performance against the Highlanders, but as I said, I'm not questioning how good the Highlanders are. So it's like, I'm not sure how many conclusions we can draw from that particular game. And Drua were just clearly the better team last year, right? So all of a sudden there's this perception thing that, Moana have improved, the Drua have dropped back. I'm just sort of struggling to find the evidence to actually, really back up either of those opinions. And that's just, in my own head. I do know that on the Moana bench, Christian Biafano is back, Sokopi Kefu's back, having those ex-internationals, the guys with the experience. That said, they are both really old now, and I don't know how much they're really contributing, maybe around the, around the facility and, giving their experience and that sort of thing. So it's a funny one. So what I've ended up doing, actually, and this is, shows you, I guess, how wildly things have fluctuated. Is I took the 8.5 on Moana, and I've taken a 5.5 on the Drua. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going to be sitting there with fingers crossed, hoping it lands in the middle.
You don't often get that opportunity in rugby anymore to look for a middle. And look, I always say, if you really like a team strong, say for example you like the -3.5 Drua for argument's sake, and you got that, and then the line went out. I tend to discourage people from going for the middle then, because then what happens is your -3.5 might win by 12 and you end up giving back. But if you're in a situation where you think, you're not really that firm on it, and you pick up the early value and then you do that, I think there's nothing wrong with waiting for a middle there. Chris, what do you make of this one? I am thinking that this could be a high-scoring game. 60, yes. When it gets to 60, us overs punters get a little bit nervous. But, yeah. What do you make?
Well, I mean, what was it, 90 and 70 the last time these two played? So I mean, they're probably gonna throw it around. They're gonna have a proper. I think they do. I think this is a proper grudge match, right? And if they have a good ding dong battle, defense is at a premium. Not their favorite discipline. Not bringing the tackle bags out at practice. So you could probably see something similar. I think, I agree that the disparity in the lines coming out was quite hectic to see. And I agree, it's probably landed in the middle. I think what I saw over the weekend, I still think the plus is the way to go. I think I wouldn't be going against. I think I actually think it's much closer than this. I capped it at about 3. I think this is a closer game. 60 points I do like. I think it will clear. I think it's a medium to low over the 60. and a medium on the +7.5.
Yeah, I must say I'm leaning towards your train of thought there as well. In fact, this could be one of those games where I go, you know what? I almost take an oracle stance on this one. I'm not going to get too involved stake-wise, but if I like Moana on the plus, what the hell? I'll back them on the board to win the game, because it is frankly one of those games that an upset could very well be.
Absolutely. Just quick because I coming in, I can see all of us, and going through these games, and by now it's quite well capped on all of it at the moment. There's no it's landing quite well there. It's just found out a real strong bet on this card at the moment. It's not that easy.
No, you did right. I saw the same thing when they came out. Always sort of sniffing for opportunities, and there wasn't a lot there. And the other thing that's been interesting through the first 2 rounds is that team announcements, they all come out at the same time, 4:00 New Zealand time, and there's been almost zero movement on any of those lines after teams come out. So either people have anticipated what the teams are going to be, which I think is possibly a little bit easier to do earlier in the season. And it's a whole lot different from when you're betting the Northern Hemisphere stuff, and you guys might know this, but when it ticks over to whatever it is, midday, and the teams come out, first thing that happens is that Bet365, they just grey out all the options because they don't know what's going to happen, and they wait till the team come out. And I'm presuming that they're probably looking at Pinnacle or some one of the sharp box with an auto mover, and the traders will just be looking to say, okay, where is this going? And then we'll just set a number, and then we'll ungray it, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah. Just before we get into this game, I'm having a bit of a laugh because we don't often get spammers in the live comments, but we had a guy trying to sell Arabic courses to Henrik Swat and Stefan Joubert. I've got a feeling he was barking up the wrong tree. And I actually found it quite easy to block comments. I didn't actually realize I've never had to really do it.
You're talking about grayed out. You grayed out a lekker Arabic deal there, Brent. I was about to get on the phone.
That's it. I was going to maybe make him an offer, if you could all pick all 6 handicaps, I'd buy the course next week. But the way my luck running, he probably would have picked all six handicaps. Chris, let's get on to the Crusaders up against the Waratahs. There has been money for the Crusaders here. I think it opened 17.5. I actually kept it at 14.5, so I mustn't mix that up with money coming. But we fairly stable line and a points line of 58.5.
Yeah, this is one game where the points have shouted at me loudly. I think this is a natural. Just got everything about it as a points punter. With generally these games when they do play can go overs. I mean the Crusaders have made some changes. There's no Drummond and McLeod, who I think are really good, but I just think it also just will make the game looser. The Tars concede, Crusaders score, especially in this. I've seen this game, but this game has been good to me, this fixture in the past. I don't see there's any reason why I need to oppose that. I think Crusaders are going to score lots. Tars will probably get up to 20, 25, probably goes over 60. Quite confident more confident on the total, because I believe the Tars are going to contribute, but you can go to the Chief Crusaders as well. I won't go on the minus because I've seen this before. The Tars have pressed up the cap as well when they start, if they've in the second half when it opens up. So I'm not going to touch the cap, but I love the total over 50. I think you could have even capped this at 60, maybe even 62.
Reverend does make a point that the Tars are the walking wounded here. Nathan, bringing you in, I'm very much in agreement with Chris on this one. My personal focus will be points, and I like his over 58.5 play. What have you got for us? The guys that force the cat out a little bit here?
Well, you're definitely buying low on the Tars if you like that side, and weirdly enough, you're almost buying high on the Crusaders at the moment as well, because there was a lot of talk of how they impressed. There was talk coming into about this is the end of the empire, and then that was put on hold because they played so well and you can't count them out and all this kind of stuff, which is it's true. But I mean, the reality is that when you get down big in a game, there's always the potential for a team to kind of let up and maybe let somebody back in. I did see a stat that when DMAC was off, that's when they conceded sort of 17 unanswered points or something. So I think that made a difference. There was definitely sort of a before and after. So I don't know. I think maybe rumors of the Crusaders triumphant return might be a little bit too soon. So they do have a very inexperienced hard pairing. So they're going with Noah Hotham and Taha Kamara, I think his name is. So I don't even know his name. That's how how inexperienced he is. So 20 plus is a big cap, and I think if you wait, you possibly get a better number. I think if you gave me 23, for instance, I would take the Tars here.
Okay, so
that current line, because I'm seeing, yes, I see 18.5 on the screen, but I'm seeing 20 pop up in places now. So I definitely, obviously, wouldn't get involved in this game. I've got it lined right around there, sort of, in that sort of 18, 19 range. But if it gets out of hand, and it can do that, like especially late on, what happens is I think people there's a lot of brand name recognition with certain teams, and they'll just sort of pile in late, regardless of what the number actually is. So yeah, if I could get a big enough number on the Tars, I'd definitely consider it.
And you've seen the Crusaders bench: Moody, Franks, Drummond, Crotty, McLeod. There's a lot of cavalry coming off the bench there for the Crusaders. Wiley characters coming off there. So I think the second half's going to be interesting. I think it could get messy. It could get wild. To be honest.
Not a lot of bookies offer the second half handicap up front. I know Sunbet did. I'm a bit limited with them at the moment, so I don't tend to go on as often. But they used to offer a second half handicap before the game, which is quite nice, because if you've got a view like you have there, Chris, of the bench coming on and that, you can grab that handicap beforehand. But most bookies will have a halftime handicap, but not a second half one. But that looks a tricky encounter. I must say, generally speaking, this looks a tricky week, and I think this might be a week to focus on the points lines. Nathan, I'm going to stay with you for the next game. This game, the handicap has been pretty much rock solid all week. I think I set it at 8.5. The bookies came out at 8.5, and that's pretty much where it's sitting. We've got a points line of 55.5, and it's really at the moment New Zealand's top team in terms of the betting against Australia's top team.
Yep. So there was a 9.5 out there, which I took. I'm on the Brumbies. I think they beat the Blues in Melbourne last year, and there were no points scored in the second half of that game. What the Brumbies tend to do is they kind of drag you into these dog fights. I think that's what they'd want to do to all of these New Zealand teams. They'll try and do it to the Chiefs as well. Brumbies ran the Chiefs really close in the semi last year. The final score was sort of 13, but I don't think that was perhaps indicative of the way the game went. It was a real dogfight, as a lot of these sort of games against the Brumbies tend to be. We know that McKenzie is banged up, came off with a rib injury. I think there was a lot of talk that, maybe he would miss this week. He's playing, but I just wonder how long they'll keep him out there for. So, even if they're winning and it seems pretty comfortable, there's always the potential for him to, if they're leading comfortably, he comes off and maybe they backdoor it. And of course, the alternative is that if he stays in, it's probably because it's a close game. So in a way, it's a little bit of a free roll. So my numbers say Brumbies. I'm happy to roll with him here.
Right, Chris, what about you? And just before I bring you in there, talking of Damien McKenzie, I saw he was 5-6 favourite at World Sports Betting to be the top point scorer. That seems a bit of a crazy price. Wow. Given that there's already some injury doubts about him. But what do you make of this game? It should be certainly one of the games of the weekend in terms of watching.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in this spot of Brumbies for sure. I think Brumbies have proven. I think they've beaten them twice in the last 5 goes. Like I said, they've taken them close. The Chiefs can bring into type of game that the Chiefs don't like. A big one was on the McKenzie factor. I think because I saw lines of 6 or 7 early in the week. I think McKenzie making the lineup has pushed could have pushed this line out because money has come for the Chiefs, it looks like, which I don't understand. But I'm on the Brumbies. I like the Brumbies. I think it's second game of the season when it's all still to play for. The Brumbies are tight, can bring it into kind of feel like we're all hands on decks basically. There's nothing with still everything to play for, which is good for the Brumbies. So I do like the Brumbies. Also, what I do like is, I know the Chiefs also have made some rotations in the forwards, which I like for this game as well, because that's where the Brumbies' strengths are. So you got a whole bunch of new guys coming in the tight 5 there for the Chiefs. So how are they ready to go? Raring to go against a tough Brumbies pack settled Brumbies team, only one change, so they're raring to go. So I just like Brumbies in the spot. Yeah, I think I would have had it at 5 or 6 the cap. So this is a nice Brumbies spot for me. And I wouldn't be scared of that over 55 at all. I think there could still be points in this game. But yeah, probably both on an equal confidence level on the Brumbies plus and over 55.
I'm a little bit nervous on the overs in this game. I actually remember that game now that Nathan mentions it. It was like 25-20 to the Brumbies last year. I think I was on the overs. I mean, when you get 45 points in the first half, you like to think your bet is fairly safe. But you do get games of 2 halves. I mean, last week it was the same for me. Unfortunately, instead of backing the Blues on the cap, I went with the newsletter best bet. I went over 57.5 points in the Blues game, and there were 32 by half time, and I just got the feeling the game was going, and I think there were 12 points in the second half. So those games of 2 halves, total points punted.
But on that note, on that note, because I quite like the second half get points as well. I play it in the bet builder sometimes as well if I do see a game of 2. But like I remember, I said the second half in the Canes Force, which actually ended up being the only highest score in second half of the whole round. So I picked it out.
I saw you nailed
it was the only one, and it definitely wasn't the only one I was thinking was going to happen. I was for sure the Highlanders and Blues game were going to have a wild second half, but it was the only one that came through, and luckily I called it because it was not a trend I was expected to see. Maybe a trend that will happen this weekend, probably. That's usually what happens.
It's not something I've ever looked into, like in terms of the actual stats behind it. So, but is there a theory behind, second half overs? Is it sort of based on? I look at matchups. I look at benches, and I just because of the amount of play when I'm doing in play, it's just the market I tend to eye out a lot. So just a lot of it comes to a gut. I'll be honest, a lot is a gut feel, but it all will be just watching the game, so many games over and over, and the matchups. And if I feel that it's going to be a stronger bench, or it's sometimes even weather when it's hot, the guys fall off in the second half. When it's much warmer, I look at that. So there's a few things I look at, and I have managed. This has worked. It's one of the markets that just worked into my strategy in the last year or doing it like that. Like versus South Africa versus Wales, for whatever reason. If you go look, it's like 80-90% second half is highest scoring. I think I just 2 years ago I just said that all 3 tests, and it was all 3 tests again. So it's just one of those trends I noticed, and then it just went. But the thing is, But sometimes the bookies are good. So the bookies are good as well. I mean, when I see it now, it used to be mostly 1-9 even money on each side of the half. Yep.
But some of the bookies are caught on the train, and it had the second halves. You were getting much lower odds sometimes. Now 1-7. So that's why also last week when that one stood out as the game in general, and that odded 1-9. Then I was like, that's why I like that one. Yeah, sorry, Brenty.
Nice.
Yeah, no. I've watched it over the years. Not a market I'm particularly keen on because I do find game of 2 halves, particularly in New Zealand rugby, but I can never tell which half is going to be the highest scoring one. But generally, I find the bookies always have the second half as a slight underdog, and the theory there being that the game is going to loosen up. But yeah, for me, that's a bet I'll only get involved with if I really don't like anything else.
I'll tell you this. In the World Cup, the second halves were high scoring, and the bookies caught on that because by the end of the round, the last round of the pools, second halves were down to 1-7, 1-7-5. So the book are watching that, but it's not a normal thing. It's like you say, games of 2 halves. It's literally if a game shouts at me that it's going to be that, then I'll go on it and confident. I won't guess it, but it's not something I'm going, no, okay, this one's going to be second. I will think about it. I don't just go and
it'd be interesting to look at the actual numbers behind it as well, because I've not done that myself. I know that in the NFL, for instance, I think it's the second quarter, which is the highest scoring. Yes. And there's a bunch of the amount of analysis that goes into sort of NFL handicapping is the next level, right? So there's also a bunch of game theory things about who wins the coin toss and how many positions you get,
who starts at the position
exactly. All of this kind of stuff, so I mean it's a game of 7s and 3s, so they have all these ridiculous key numbers and all that kind of stuff.
NFL's become ridiculously stats orientated, and betting and in play the games change a lot on the back of stats. I don't know. I just started getting into recently, and I love it. I enjoy it, but it's really very interesting stats because you can the way the structure of the game, unlike rugby, there's a bit more variables that go in where you can tell with NFL. There's definitely we're digressing there, but the matchups and the stats, and they come if you listen to the pros, they're pretty good at calling what's going to happen.
Yeah. And the game theory stuff and the in-game decision making is massive as well. When to go for 2. There was a huge amount of debate at the Super Bowl about whether you should have kicked off or received the kickoff in overtime because of the overtime rules. It's just, and there was, the amount of stats that have gone into it to try and make.
What did you see Mahomes' face when they said they're going to receive? Because they all week had been planning, the Chiefs had been planning for that to not receive whatever, and the 49ers just made the decision for them, and they literally went and high-fived each other because they're like, "What the hell are these oaks thinking?"
Definitely, it's interesting stuff, and like I'm sure there are elements of some of that stuff in rugby. If you took the time to kind of look at it, but not to the same level, but it's probably some untapped potential there.
I say quite a lot of South Africans do enjoy the NFL punting that, and I guess at the end of the day, as a punter, how can I say? Years ago when I started betting, there was a lot more opportunity, a lot more of those middles that you spoke about, Nathan. Where you'd get a big line because it wasn't so stats based and there wasn't such information freely available. And now, as betting gets more and more technical, it almost forces you to go the stats route to try and be that little bit. I mean, you're not looking for a big edge; you just want that little edge over the bookmakers in order to make profit in the long run. But anyway, we got one more game to talk about here, gents. It's also another nice game. The Hurricanes, who were quite impressive last week. One of my few winning bets I landed on the opening weekend of Super Rugby. They play against the Reds. Chris, the Hurricanes are -9.5, and we got a point line of 57.5.
Yeah, Brent, this is one of the games I immediately wanted to look at. Eyed out was the Canes. I enjoy the Canes. I think Canes at their best are as good as any in the competition. They just don't do it repetitively and game after game like other teams do more consistently. If they were more consistent, they could be one of the favorites. So I like the Canes. I do like the Canes. I liked it. I think I would have liked it a bit lower, but I still like the Canes. The only thing that I'm against the Canes is no Karifi, the Duplessis. I mean Duplessis and Flanders, big players for them. So this is made. I was coming in head first as one of my favorite bets of the weekend, and I still think they're going to be too powerful for the Reds. Even though the Reds put on a show against the Tars, I just think the Canes are just a much better machine than the Reds. So I like the Canes there, but I'm gonna, because of the team news that I was seeing just before it came, I need to take a step back on this game, because that threw me out, because those two loose forwards are very key in what they do. They got Barrett back at 12, which is great. I mean, their backline's awesome. But I don't know much about these loose forwards, and I don't know, is that going to cause disruption in their ruck and maul in play and not get them the possible they need. But if I was to call at the moment, I'd still be on the Canes +9, because I just think they're just a far better team than
a -9.
-9. Sorry, my -9. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to say Canes +9. You won't get much price there. But no, 100%. Henrik just making the point. Roygaard starting. I actually tipped him for last try scorer last week at 22-1, which I thought was a cracking price. He never arrived, but you could see him sniffing out. He made the final pass for the final try. He loves to sniff the try line. So wouldn't argue with that at all. I know Henrik will probably enjoy this comment. Duplessis Karefi, yeah, he is a good player, but I can tell you can drop 3 or 4 penalties off the Reds' final tally compared to what they would have got easy in the game, because he's a bit of a walking penalty guy. In my opinion. No, there we go. Henrik just came up with exactly the same comment. I thought he would have the same. Right, Nathan.
I've seen him munch up NPC. Okay, maybe Super Rugby, but I've seen him take more to the racks to the cleaners in NPC. So I would happily have it in my team.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I think you're either a fan of his or you aren't. Yeah, right, exactly, Nathan, bring us home here with the Hurricanes against the Reds.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's kind of good. We've got to the last game and we've finally got a bit of disagreement, I think. So I'm going to go the other way. So when we spoke last week, we talked about that Reds Waratahs game and getting a view of which team had taken a step forward during the off season. And I think we got somewhat of an answer to that. Obviously, early in the season, you don't want to read too much into it, but there's never been any shortage of talent in the Red squad. I think if you look at it on paper, it's always been pretty good. And it does make you wonder whether maybe the coaching to some extent was holding them back. I think on paper, even on paper, these look like evenly matched teams. And as we just sort of talked about, Kane's effectively missing an entire back row. And the thing that's a little bit unusual and kind of disjointed about it is that they don't really have a true 7. I mean, it would be 6 for you guys, but a true open side flanker, like a poacher. So the Reds have got, Fraser McWright, they've got Liam Wright. They'll compete hard at the breakdown. And then we've got, the Hurricanes have got Peter Lackey, I think, playing 7. And he's nowhere near an open side flanker. Maybe played that at school, I don't know. But And you also talked about, the Wellington NPC team, and there's a core of players from that team, and they actually underperformed last year. They were good the year before, but this year they weren't great. I actually think that the Reds could be kind of on the rise here a little bit. I think it's in full disclosure, I took them at plus 11. So that 9.5. I think you'll probably see better numbers out there than that. And I think anything 10 or 10 plus, I like the Reds quite a lot here.
I'm also leaning towards the Reds in this one.
Yeah.
We're going to get into the best bets in just a second. But, guys, before we do that, I just want to quickly get your views. And, Nathan, I'll start with you. We've got United Rugby Championship, a game this weekend. Just anything catch your eye so far? I know team news, we got to wait. And we will be talking a little bit more detail tonight on this one. But anything catch your eye?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, waiting for team news. But the good thing is, I think with the South African teams, they're less disruptive. And I think it's probably a little bit more obvious what they're going to do. When we did a URC show a few weeks back, and we kind of joked about backing the Sharks, and I said I couldn't bring myself to do it, and then I did. But fortunately, I got the right number on that one. So I think I took Sharks sort of plus 5.5. What was interesting is that then they got backed all the way in, I think, to minus a half, so almost pick him. So as always, there was a lot of optimism. Clearly, people looking at the team sheet and thinking, the Sharks are so great on paper, surely they're going to come right at some point. And, again, they failed to meet those expectations. So I'm going to flip this around. As I said, you always bet numbers, not teams. So, I was on the Sharks last time. I'm going to oppose them this time. I think the Lions, if you can still get a 2.5, which I was able to do earlier in the week, I think that's good. But, even at 3.5, I like the Lions.
Right,
Chris, yourself, anything on the URC?
I'll tell you, I haven't had any look at the URC yet, but I'm going to be on the opposite. I think this is the time Sharks are gonna bite. I don't think the Lions are as good as I love the Lions, but the Sharks should have put them away last time, and I think they're going to come and put it right this week. I think the Sharks win this one.
I'm leaning towards the Lions as well, but not pretty undecided. Looking forward to the Bulls against Stormers. I know my son will be at that game at Loftus. I think that's going to be a cracker. And the Stormers have got an excellent record against the Bulls, and I'm possibly lining up a bit of a sneaky board pick there on the Stormers. But that brings us into the best bets for Super Rugby. And Chris, let me start with you. It wasn't a weekend where I got the feeling all three of us are a little bit wary about this weekend.
Yeah.
What's your best bet or best bets on the card?
Yeah, a bit weird, but I'm going to give my three strongest at this point on what I like. I like the Mona plus 7. I like the overs 58 in the Sadist game. I think it's going over 60 quite clear well, and I like the Brumbies plus 9. I think those are my three strongest at this point for Super Rugby.
And Nathan, yourself?
Yeah, fully on board with the Brumbies pick, and I suppose just the final one that I said, which was the Reds. So as I said, I think look around, shop around, try and get double figures. But if you can, I like the Reds at that number.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Those of us in South Africa got a bit of a work day ahead of us. Nathan probably going to relax a bit before he hits the sack.
Weekend already. Yeah, nice.
And to the boys on the live chat, thanks a lot, Henrik. Look forward to chatting to you a little bit later. And Chris, thanks for joining us. Hope the power's back soon. And Nathan, always great to have you on the show. Have a good hunting weekend.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was great. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.